Oftentimes we'll do that. But it says it's live on YouTube now. That's a good sign.
Okay.
I don't hear anything. Sometime we'll do that. It says it's.
Okay, are we good?
Seems like we might be ready, yes.
Okay. So if we're recording and before you go to that, I just want to note to the board that we have Councilmember Clark as an attendee sitting in, and we have Emma Clark, no relation that I'm aware of. Emma is our intern who has been following the city of Wildwood. She comes to our council meetings. She is a junior at Eureka High School. And Emma, I've spent time with her explaining things that are going on at City Hall. A really, really sharp young lady. So I see her sitting in. So we all need to behave ourselves and show what goes on. So I will shut up and you all can take it from there.
All right, well, we're ready to begin. We'll start off with roll call.
All right, Marshall Jeff Bader,
Here.
board members Chris Preston,
Here.
Vince Loyal,
Here.
and Jeff Baker is absent. Councilmember Dave Bertolino.
Here.
All right, and it looks like we have also present Rick Brown, Director of Public Works, Steve Cross, City Administrator, Police Liaison, Captain James Mundell, and Metro West Fire Liaison Assistant Chief John Bradley. And Michelle, your meeting recorder.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, so roll call's completed. We'll start off with approval of minutes. I hear they were attached to today's agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the Board of Public Safety minutes from December 2, 2021?
I make a motion to approve those minutes.
Got a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It'd be easier if I would say, is anybody opposed? Okay.
Might be.
All right, moving on, we'll go to the approval of minutes for the public safety minutes from March 2022. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second,
Second.
is anyone opposed? Motion carried, minutes are approved. Third thing is public comments. Do we have any public comments for this meeting?
If there's anyone who has a comment they'd like to make, and especially our attendees, please let us know or raise your hand. And we'd be glad to promote them to a panelist to make a comment.
Give them just a few seconds here.
Not seeing anybody. Mr. Bader.
All right, then we'll move on to the next item, which is informational. Start with the update on the Old State Road at Ridge Road crosswalk and restriping. Who do we have that is?
Well, it's between Rick Rye. So Rick, do you want to go ahead? Rick, why don't you go ahead and start and I'll jump in if there's anything I need to say.
I will do my best to start this off. If you like, that's fine. So I think at a prior meeting, I don't remember the exact date. It might have been December. This was on the agenda, maybe for informational purposes. Primarily, we've had an ongoing issue there that we've been working to respond to. Last year, at some point, we had an incident where a young man was struck at the crosswalk over Old State Road, which is immediately south of Ridge Road. That's prompted some coordination between the city and St. Louis County over the safety of that crosswalk. After many months, I'm pleased to report that we, as of today, actually have gotten the crosswalk upgraded with the flashing, what we call rapid rectangular flashing beacons. So that crosswalk has now been modified and upgraded such that it has a push button for pedestrians to push that activates the rapid flashing beacons at that location. And that's the result of a cost share agreement between the city of Wildwood, essentially in St. Louis County, to get that done. County purchased the equipment and the city had it installed by one of our contractors. So that's some good news that has taken a few months to get enacted, but they have been installed and they should be operational hopefully any day now. In addition to that, I was going to point out, in part of the discussions over improving safety at that location, we've also looked at getting funds to construct a new roundabout at the intersection. I think most of you may be aware of that. We've attempted a couple times and have applied for federal funds for a new roundabout at Ridge Road and Old State Road. We've been unsuccessful on 2 occasions in the past. We've been talking to St. Louis County about potentially also applying in the future. But in the meantime, in those discussions, the county staff, in their review of the intersection, recommended restriping the Ridge Road approach at Old State Road. The intent was to square up the Ridge Road approach so that motorists that are wanting to turn onto Old State from Ridge Road have a more favorable approach, and that they're normal to the traffic flow on Old State and not on a skew, as was the case. So that work has actually just been recently completed as well. So the county, using their own forces at their own expense, restriped the Ridge Road approach, and they actually poured a concrete channelizing island in to separate the right turners from the left. And that work has been completed over the last week or so and is in place now and functioning. So I think that's another good improvement, and certainly a low-cost improvement that the county was able to spearhead and get done, in part based on our contacts with them. So some good favorable things are occurring at that location. So Steve, did you want to add anything else about that?
Not a whole lot, Rick. Rick gave a very, very good summary. We're quite pleased with the relationship that we have with St. Louis County. As Rick pointed out, the work that was done at the intersection of Ridge Road, because we decided as a group, and when I say as a group, there's really 3 parties, the city of Ellisville, the city of Wildwood, and St. Louis County, that would go in and be party to put in that roundabout. And St. Louis County was not willing to be part of that group this year. We did have a meeting with East West Gateway that would be providing the funding, and they gave us a heads up that said it was extremely unlikely that they would approve the federal funding for that roundabout. So, but what the St. Louis County did do, though, was step up, and they, as Rick said, on their own dime, put in that channelizing island. The barriers are still up, and those should come down hopefully tomorrow, because I think the island is cured now. But Rick and I drove by there today, and it looks really, really good. In fact, we got a compliment by a resident at the Coffee with the Mayor this morning, who said they were really liked the way that now, if you are coming up to Old State Road on Ridge and you want to go southbound, it makes it much easier, where you're not turning your neck 3/4 of the way around trying to look over your shoulder. So we're quite pleased with that. They did complete today the crosswalk. We're a little confused, but we've reached out to St. Louis County because our contractor, Meyer Electric, who did the installation of the rapid rectangular flashing beacon, they were not allowed by St. Louis County to turn it on, and we're a little confused about that. So we reached out to St. Louis County. Hopefully, we get that rectified tomorrow to where it actually is operable, and they could do that. And then, so we're quite pleased with both of those things. And the county, again, was a very good partner in providing the materials, and we simply paid for the installation. And then the next item on the agenda was the third item that Rick and I have addressed on Old State Road, and Rick can talk about that, which is Old State Road. This is further south now at Lakeshore Meadows Drive, and Rick and I are in conversations with the trustees there. So I'll let Rick talk about that. Before we move on to that next item, though, are there any questions for Rick and I with regards to Old State and Ridge, or the lighted crosswalk? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next item on the agenda.
So yes, I'll go ahead and speak to that. As Steve referenced, we've also had discussions, some pretty significant discussions about Old State Road further to the south at Fairhaven subdivision. Fairhaven is located, I was trying to get a measurement. I want to say it's about half a mile south of Ridge Road, approximately, maybe a little further. But the residents of Fairhaven, if you're familiar with that area, the Old State Road is on a crest curve at the entrance to Fairhaven subdivision. The site distance has never been very good. It's minimal, and the residents of the subdivision are not pleased with the situation. It's been that way since the subdivision was constructed some 25 plus years ago. But they have also raised this concern more recently, requesting something to be done, and reached out to the county as well as the city in that regard. So we've had also discussions with the county Department of Transportation staff, Stephanie Leon Streeter in particular, and I know Mr. Cross has been in contact with County Council Member Harder as well, and just discussing what we might be able to do there to help the situation out. Initially, the request was made by the trustees to consider improving the signage on Old State Road at the subdivision, potentially put in some lighted signs. That request went to the county. They were not agreeable to doing that. They did not want to move forward in that regard. But in looking at it, they did come up with another suggestion, which was potentially installing a raised channelizing island on Lakeshore Meadows Drive, and that's the main road out of Fairhaven subdivision onto Old State Road. And the idea was, by installing the raised island in the center of Lakeshore Meadows, you would encourage the southbound motorists as they turn into Fairhaven to pull as far to the south as they can, so they can see as well as possible and have the greatest sight distance ahead to see oncoming traffic effectively. And that was the plan, was to encourage that to occur by installing the raised island. The more we looked into it, quite frankly, with the HOA, we became aware that the island is going to be an obstruction to larger trucks if we did it. So what we told the trustees in meetings with them is that if we constructed it, it would have to be a low profile island, would have to be mountable so that trucks and larger vehicles could drive over it, because they would by their size off track onto the island. And after talking with the trustees a little further about it, we've kind of decided to hold off, I think, at this point, going forward with that idea. Just seemed like the less the not the best favorable approach, frankly. So we're not apt to move forward at this time with that idea, but we are going to go back to the county actually tomorrow morning and have a follow-up meeting with their staff, potentially to come up with some other ideas. So just making sure we haven't ruled out any possibilities to improve the safety at that intersection for the residents there. And I'll let Steve add anything else he might think I left off in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Once again, a very good summary. The residents have been talking to us, and what they wanted, there are two signs, both northbound and southbound, approaching that subdivision that are rectangular in shape, that say, something, limited sight distance, or Hillcrest limited sight distance, something along those lines. And what they asked initially was, could those signs be flashing with LED lights? And that's what Rick and I first approached the county about. And for various reasons, the county said, for consistency and so forth, they weren't going to do that. And that's when they proposed to do striping as well as put that island. But again, as Rick mentioned, it would have to be a mountable, traversable type island, and therefore it really wasn't going to work. Rick's and my intent in our meeting tomorrow is to go back to the county, and I'm going to push them and see if I can't get them to reconsider to make those flashing signs. because I think that would satisfy the residents and the trustees if we could get them to be, with LED lights and some sort of flashing, or if they're gonna, stand their ground and say they're not going to do that, then ask them for some other alternative to help the residents, because there's been an accident there, at least one that I'm aware of in recent memory. And so the residents have a valid complaint or concern of southbound traffic, and the island was what the island was supposed to do is that southbound traffic, instead of making a quick turn into the subdivision, basically in the outbound lane, which was, to avoid the northbound oncoming traffic, that island would have forced them to go further, crest the hill, and then turn in. So the county recognizes that it is a safety issue, so we'll see what they have to say. But we'll find out a little bit more tomorrow.
All right, and it looks like Mr. Bartolino has a question.
Yeah, just a follow up there, Steve. You kind of answered it for me, but I was going to ask Captain Mundell the same thing. What is the accident history at that intersection? And Steve, you mentioned there has been one. What has it been like, and is it such that, that in your opinion, I'm putting you on the spot, Jim, merits some additional features there?
Well, I'd have to look at the actual numbers. I know we checked it when this discussion started, unless Rick has them handy. There's not a lot of accidents. I think it's probably more of the comfort level of the residents coming out of the subdivision, that they have a concern about passing traffic. I believe that the sight distance, if I'm thinking of the right entrance there, is fairly good. But I think they would feel more comfortable, obviously, if there were some extra measures in place. But I don't believe that there's a lot of crash data there that would really justify or show that there was an extreme problem.
And he's absolutely right, Mr. Berlino. Again, in Rick's and my conversation at the end of last week with the trustees, which was our second meeting with them, and to go back over the options, they did point out that there had been one accident. And I think really that's all there has been in the last few years. But and I think that was fairly recent, actually, maybe within the last year or two, I think they mentioned. But their concern is, well, all it takes is one. If there's a family trying to turn into the subdivision, if they don't crest the hill and turn in, and so they have a valid concern. But at the end of the day, it is not Wildwoods Road. It is St. Louis County's road, and ultimately they're the ones that have to approve additional signage, additional striping, lighting up signs, or whatever. We can suggest and talk and so forth, but they actually make the final decision.
Thank you.
All right, no further discussion on that. We'll move on to old business. It looks like we have no items under the old business. Moving on to new business, we'll talk about the proposed purchase of a portable changeable message sign.
I'll speak to this. That's okay, Captain. Captain Mundell and myself been conferring about the proposed purchase of a portable changeable message sign. Both the Wildwood Precinct and the Department of Public Works have typically used these in the past for public safety purposes. And we are proposing to purchase a new one for use by Public Works, Wildwood Precinct, and potentially also the Department of Parks throughout the course of the year as necessary. But we have typically used these primarily for public safety, and that is the primary intent here. We use them on construction projects to help address traffic changes or road closures. We use them for emergency situations as necessary. Of course, they're very helpful in that regard. And we do use them sometimes for events, City of Wildwood events, for traffic handling, or provide notice for where to park and those kind of things for events. So the Wildwood Precinct did budget some funds for this in their budget for fiscal year 2022. And typically for purchases like this, we utilize the State of Missouri Cooperative Procurement Program. So under that program, bidders get selected essentially statewide based on their bids. And for this item, the low bidder is American Signal Company. So we did reach out to them and received a quote for the proposed model. Or actually, I think Captain Mundell started this whole process. And we do have a quote provided from American Signal Company for a changeable message sign. These are, again, portable signs that are typically towed behind a vehicle with a solar panel for power with battery backup. The price, the quotation amount is $18,631.66. So that is the recommendation to the Board of Public Safety from both departments, is to proceed with the purchase of one changeable message sign for 2022 at that amount. So we are requesting a favorable motion from the board approving this recommendation. And if that is done, we will follow up with a resolution to the city council for the purchase to move forward. And so with that, I'll turn it back for any questions from the board.
Mr. Marshall, if I may, before we get into I want to clarify one thing, if I may. If there is a favorable recommendation, I would suggest that the recommendation wording be specific, and that this message board would be used for traffic safety. And the reason I say that to this board is that there has been resistance in the past for using these signs for things other than that. So to use it to advertise for an event, there has been some pushback by a number of folks about that. So if that resistance is still there, we want to be careful and that this is used only for safety, and that is how it's presented to council, so that folks understand it's not going to be a message board that says, this way to the farmer's market, or hey, see our fireworks display or something, because there is that kind of goes contrary to our sign ordinances that exist in terms of this kind of thing. So we want to be very careful when that motion is made, assuming that we go forward in terms of the usage of this board. Thank you.
Vince, you were going to say something?
Yeah, the first question I have is, are Prop P funds being utilized to purchase this board?
It is in the police budget, and that is using Prop P funds. That is correct, sir.
Okay, the other question regarding that is that in the unlikely event that the contractor or police services would ever change, does the city of Wildwood retain ownership of the board, or does it go with the county police?
It's owned by the city.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't know all the behind the scenes stuff, Steve, but I have actually no problem with the city using this board as long as it's available for public safety needs when appropriate. If it's used for any other informational purposes, the city, I would actually be in favor of that. And I would not want to limit the utilization of the board as long as the first priority is for public safety purposes. So I would not be in favor of limiting it solely to public safety, but that's my thoughts on it.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Loyal. And again, I was only bringing that to this board's attention is simply because there has been pretty strong resistance in the past about using these message boards for other types of things. And I just wanted this board to be aware of that, however we approach it. But I just wanted you all to know that.
Thank you.
Mr. Bertolino?
Yeah, I agree with Vince. If it is the property of the city and not the county police, then we can use it for whatever we want to use it for. We could make the wording, its primary purpose is safety, but it has a secondary purpose of other messaging. And I'm curious, Dave, I don't want to air dirty laundry, but who's raising an issue about using a friggin' sign?
Well, I mean, if you look at both sides of the argument, I mean, I agree that, this is a multi-purpose board. And I think as long as you can tie it back into a traffic or a public safety nexus, you would be okay. For instance, if you use that signboard to direct people attending a city event to parking at, town center or wherever, you can make the argument that is being used for traffic purposes. On the other side of the coin, I think that if we have it up, by the dumpster behind City Hall that says recycle your Christmas lights here, a lot of people are saying, wait a minute, we could be using that for traffic safety somewhere. So, yeah, I agree with Vince and Dave that, the primary purpose, has to, in my opinion, should be for traffic safety, traffic enforcement, traffic, education, and then just be careful when we use it to tie it into, I mean, I don't know how you would say, we're having an electronics recycling day and tie that into a traffic, safety issue, but a lot of, I don't know that we want to ban it from being a message board directing people to parking or directing people to a safe, alternate route or something like that.
Well, again, Mr. Marshall, and Mr. Berlino, again, the primary purpose of this board would be for traffic safety, and that is absolutely the right approach for this. But to answer your question, Mr. Berlino, in a manner that I can, is that you're probably aware, I'm sure you're aware that we have some fairly stringent sign regulations in terms of the kind of signage that we allow other businesses and entities within the city of Wildwood, what they can and cannot do. And so we have to be cognizant of that, and the optics would not be good if we deny someone else to be able to use it for a school function or something, and yet we use it for that purpose like that. And that's kind of the point that I was making, is that we have to just be careful about that we are following our own ordinances and our own guidelines.
Vince?
I would like to make a motion that we approve the recommendation for the purchase of the signboard to be utilized in accordance with the City of Wildwood's rules and ordinances.
I'll second that motion.
Right. All those, or anyone opposed or would like to make additional comments? I do have one question, and that's simply not related to the motion. Let's hold that just a second. I'm assuming that the two existing signboards we've got are would they be repaired, taken out of service, use two to make one, or what's going to be the status with those, if anybody asks?
Well, I think for the time being, we would probably retain them. It's good to have more than two on hand, in my opinion, because we've had situations where we've needed more than two. So I think the goal would be, in my mind, to have at least three on hand. But the two that we have that are operating, one's from 2010, the other's from 2013. So they are getting dated, and the technology is passing them by. So we'd like to essentially update those in the future as well. So I think short term, we'd probably try to retain them at least for another year and maybe phase them out.
Yep, I was just curious on that. I agree with you. I think more is better on this one. Have spares and everything else. So the motion was from Mr. Loyal to recommend the purchase of these signs and to be used within accordance of the ordinances of the City of Wildwood. So do we need to add anything to that, primarily traffic and public safety related to traffic flow? I mean, I'm not saying we have to. I'm just asking if anybody wants it added before we take a vote on the motion.
I think personally, the way that Mr. Loyal presented the motion, I think pretty well covers this. I feel comfortable with that motion.
All right. Is there anybody opposed to it? Nobody being opposed. I think that we can say that we support this purchase as a unanimous board.
Aye.
All right. Moving on to the second. Do we need a roll call vote on that by chance?
We typically have been, go ahead,
Go ahead,
Mr.
Rick.
We typically have been doing a voice vote, I believe.
All right.
unless-
So
I think we ought to do a complete voice vote, ask for all in favor and hear what and be on record. Any opposed, any abstain. I think
Right.
we can do a voice vote, but we should do all three.
All right. I do, regarding Mr. Loyal's motion, are there any, or who are in favor? Let's start with that.
Aye.
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 All right, regarding Mr. Loyal's motion, is there anybody who is opposed to it? Hearing none, is there anybody that wishes to abstain from the voting on this motion? All right, Mr. Cross, I think we can say that all members present voted in favor of supporting the motion presented by Mr. Loyal.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Next item is the proposed agreement with Metro West Fire District for traffic signal preemption system.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. I'll start off on this one, if that's okay, but I do want to acknowledge that we have John Bradley with us, so he should be able to speak to some degree, I think, relative to this request, although I didn't ask him to be prepared or anything. But we do have a request from Metro West Fire to work with the city essentially to install priority control signal systems at our 3 traffic signals. We have 3 signals that we maintain that are city owned. The one right out here on Main Street at Taylor as you come in, and then over in front of Schnucks at Wildwood Crossing on Manchester, and then just to the, I guess, to the east on Pierside Lane at Manchester. Those are the 3 signals that we actually own and maintain. And my understanding from some time is that Metro West has been utilizing these priority control systems on traffic signals for primarily MoDOT routes, and I guess maybe some county signals as well. I know when I early worked at MoDOT some 25 years ago, I believe they were installed on Route 100 at the traffic signals. So they've had a good long history with using these systems to provide priority to emergency vehicles. Essentially, they preempt the signal cycle to give a green light to the emergency vehicles as they are responding. And the equipment seems to work pretty well. So the technology has advanced over the years, and it's now GPS based. And I'm not really an expert at all on how it operates, but the technology has advanced. My understanding is that Metro West has upgraded these systems to implement the latest technology. And they also want to expand them now so that they've incorporated our 3 traffic signals in addition to the ones they already have in place. So the request is essentially for the city to execute an agreement with Metro West that would implement these preemption systems on our 3 traffic signals. And I think if there's any, I guess I'll turn it over to John Bradley. If John, do you have anything additional that you think would be helpful to add from your perspective?
You kind of covered it. We've had this system in place for quite some time. Chief Loyal, probably about 2003, I think is when we went with it originally, 2001. It was a 3M product. It was called Opticom. Since then, we've upgraded to the next generation of the system. It's tiered out to where ambulances have priority, fire trucks, and you'll see the chief support vehicles fall, whether it's a second tier or the chief vehicles even go to a third. Captain Mundell, I can't speak for you. I think you guys are on the system.
No,
You're not?
not that I'm
Okay.
aware of. But if
Okay.
you want to fund, to put it on all our police cars, I'll take you up on it. So
Duly noted. So it's been in place for quite some time, and you are correct. We have worked with MoDOT and St. Louis County over the last couple decades, and literally these 3 signs that we have left are the last of the upgrade of this system. I can answer as much as I can. This gets pretty techy. We've got a great group of folks in our organization that work on this, so I'll do my very best to answer any questions about it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the primary thing that they will do is they'll basically short cycle the lights from a yellow to a red and let the emergency vehicles go through. Is that correct?
That's correct. It will, it picks up through GPS and a signal. Like I said, the ambulances are primary. It'll cycle the light quickly to make the emergency vehicle that it picks up to get a green light to pass through. The problem with the older generation stuff in the past is that, and MoDOT had a huge problem with it very, very early in the stage. I'm talking 20 years ago, because it did break the cycle of lights. That stuff has really come around, and the technology is there now to get it all back on point, which I know is a big satisfactory thing for them as well.
One of the things I look at with this is I know that your emergency vehicles have lights and they have sirens. So now if we can get the traffic signals in their favor, that just is another layer of basically prevention and safety. I mean, I'll be honest, for me, it's a pretty much easy decision.
This works just as well for us as it does for the citizens, to be able to, because the cars nowadays are soundproof. If you catch the lights and then you see the screen, it allows that traffic to move through that intersection and pull over to the right. Whereas you'll see some intersections where it's red and the ambulance is trying to get through and folks get nervous. It's normal, but this does help cycle that through, and it's safer for everybody.
Oh, I agree. Vince, you had your hand up a couple times there.
A couple questions and a comment. First off, Rick, the letter dated from Metro West is from 2020. Has it taken 2 years for this to come to this committee?
Well, we were first approached a couple of years. I believe that is close to being accurate. I don't know where we had some initial discussions, yes, about 2 years ago, and were provided the original draft of the agreement at that time, I believe. We provided some comments back to Metro West, I think in September of 2020. And then for whatever reason, it did seem to sit, and we didn't hear a word back from Metro West until about a couple months ago. So I think they went ahead and did pretty much everything else that was on their plate, and now have kind of come back to us and said, hey, we want to get this going to wrap things
I just
up.
want to, I mean, it's a big deal. And Chief Stono, who preceded me with the district, initiated this program. And it's a wonderful program that not only protects the firefighters and responding to emergencies, but the citizens, the community as well. So it's a wonderful system. It's an extremely expensive a system. And I know Captain Mundell, one of the things, at least when I was there, I'm assuming that Johnny would be the same, is that we've always offered it to police agencies if they were willing to provide the transmitters to activate it, but that would be at their cost. But it's a wonderful system that provides tremendous community safety as well as first responder safety. And my recommendation will be that we support this wholly, and I do that. But I would think if we get further recommendations on this, if we could somehow expedite it to this board to keep it moving, I would certainly be in support of that. These aren't big deal intersections, if you will, but every intersection for emergency responders is a big deal. So I guess that's my only comments. And if you're looking for a recommendation, I make a recommendation. We approve the desire to incorporate these signals into the pre-entrance system that Metro West is funding.
So any other discussion on this? We can reword this into a motion from Mr. Loyal that he recommends that we pursue this agreement and recommend support to it to the board. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to do a roll call. Yes, sir, Mr. Bertolino.
I'll second that.
Thank you, because I almost forgot to do that. Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Do I hear those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any who are opposed? Hearing none, do we have anyone who is wishing to abstain from this vote? All right, well, then it is the desire of the board to pass the motion recommending that we pursue the agreement, that the city of Wildwood pursue the agreement with Metro West for the continuation of this preemptive signal project.
Thank you very much.
I just have one question. Follow up. Rick, do you anticipate I know there are 16 pages of documents, any anticipated problems with the agreement, the way it's worded right now from going forward?
No, I don't believe so. Again, we did look at it very thoroughly with our city attorney some months ago and provided comments back. So I think at this point, it should be in pretty good shape. I do have it set up to be on the council's agenda for Monday night. So with this passage by the board tonight, it will be on the council's agenda Monday night for passage, or at least for first reading.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, and did I read that correctly, that this is no cost to the city of Wildwood?
That's correct. Yes.
I mean, like I said, it adds an additional safety measure to emergency vehicle operation. Yes, sir, Mr. Bertolino.
I was going to ask Rick if it's on the agenda for Monday night, and maybe ask John this. Is there an urgency? Essentially, are you ready to pull the trigger on this? And would you ask for a second reading on Monday?
I saw Rick's email regarding that to Deputy Chief Cook. The second reading can take place at the following meeting. Our real goal is to get something done, but something approved by the first part of May with the city. So it's not a huge rush, but I think the readings, the way that they have them scheduled are fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next item of business. We have not ready for action. Nothing is there. We have nothing under the other. And unless somebody has something, yes, sir, Mr. Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Bader. Before you call for an adjournment, I just wanted to mention, and I wanted to give you and this board the opportunity to discuss the format of future meetings. I know that you had asked about that. And so what I wanted to do was to provide the options that are available to all committees and all boards and all commissions within the city of Wildwood. Now that the worst, if you will, of the pandemic is past us, and there are some officials that are calling us now an endemic, whatever that means. I am being asked by a number of the committee chairs what their options are. All other than the council meeting at the current, all boards and all commissions are still meeting by Zoom. We've had one committee that for the last meeting of the current sitting council wanted to meet a hybrid. So the options are to continue any meeting based, and I'm leaving this entirely up to the committee chair and their committees, what they want to do. And we will accommodate any one of the three, which is Zoom, all in person, or a hybrid. And the hybrid consists of a meeting in the council chambers, because that's where the technology exists, so that those folks can attend in person should they wish, but they can also attend via Zoom if they wish. The Zoom option in any regard is good, because we certainly want to give the residents and anyone else the ability to be able to view this on YouTube and so forth. So that option won't go away, but you do have the option of having a hybrid if a particular committee or board or commission wishes to do that. The only caveat to that would be that the chair of that committee or board or commission needs to be present. We can't have a hybrid where the chair is participating via Zoom and other people are there in person. That doesn't work. So that is the one caveat. But I wanted to at least, Mr. Bader, let you aware of what the options were, so that if you wanted to poll this board to find out what they wanted to do for future meetings, and it's not a one size fits all either. You can vary that from meeting to meeting right now as it exists. Now, once the county emergency order, executive order expires, and right now we believe that might potentially be end of June, that triggers some actions. And so the options I am laying out now might go away once that emergency order, if we can actually determine what that situation is. But again, before you adjourn, I wanted to at least give you the option of deciding how you might want to handle future meetings, sir.
Well, and I'll just, state that I'm entirely comfortable with Zoom, and because this is a relatively small group, Zoom seems to work very well. I attend what they call an 8:15 leadership huddle meeting every morning at Mercy that has 168 people on it. So that can get kind of messy at times. But, my opinion is Zoom is fine with me. I know I had inquired to Rick about if this was going to be an in-person meeting. And my only inquiry is that if there was going to be other people there, I would have showed up in person. But I'm also entirely comfortable with Zoom, and I'm going to open it up for discussion with the other people involved.
I would just say, with the importance of the marshal being present, determining whether he can be in person or not, if it's better for him to be at Zoom, I'm fine with that. Otherwise, hybrid, I'm fine with also.
I'm also fine with hybrid. I mean, I'm open to either one 100%. So whatever the group wants to do, I'm definitely willing to acquiesce to.
I prefer Zoom, Jeff.
All right. Chief Bradley?
I'm flexible with anything. This works for me, but if it's in person or whatever you all want to do, I'll make it work. I'm pretty flexible.
So, I'm good with Zoom. I think that if we ever have one of these large scale discussions that's going to draw a lot of public comments, then we consider going, hybrid or in person at that point. But, I'll be honest with the people on this meeting, it all seemed everybody's very comfortable with Zoom. So, I'm comfortable with staying Zoom under the understanding that if we get some very touchy issue that's going to draw a lot of public comments or a lot of, concerns from the public, then we consider doing it in person at that point or a hybrid, but, stick with Zoom until then, if everybody's okay with that.
Sure.
All right,
Thank you.
no problem. Now, will our minutes reflect that with the discussion that we just had?
Yes.
Okay, good. Vince, you got another question?
Just one last comment. I'm sure you're all aware that Metro West passed their bond issue on Tuesday. And it's a big deal for public safety in Wildwood. And I commend Chief Bradley and the district for forward thinking. The district should be in very good shape for a long time. And although it's kind of a passive thing to most of the residents, it's really a big deal that the infrastructure and the capital needs will be met by the district. So congratulations, John.
Thank you. We appreciate everybody's support. We're good for the next 10 years, capital planning. So it's a great thing.
Well, I would love to say you have my support, but unfortunately I live in the Monarch District. All right. Do I hear a motion? If there's no further discussion, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn from Vince Loyal and a second from Chris Preston. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Anybody abstaining? This meeting is adjourned.